All right, guys, so I'm going to show you now another example. And this is one of my favorite examples of how people can make money podcasting, because these guys that I'm going to show you right now make over 60,000 US dollars a month with their podcast. That's right, you heard right, 60,000 US dollars a month with their podcast. Now, how many people do you know personally who are making $60,000 a month? Probably not many, and probably perhaps not even any, right? The point here I'm trying to make and trying to show you is that there is a lot of money in podcasting. It is a huge multi-billion dollar industry. It is massive. It is super big. It is huge. And the reason why podcasting is so big is because there are a lot of things that people can listen to while they're doing other things. So people could be driving, they could be working out at the gym, they could be commuting while they're going to work or going to see a friend or whatever. But you wouldn't be able to do that if you were, for example, trying to watch something. Like you can't, for example, it's very hard for you to watch something or to try to do something while at the same time you're doing something else. If you have to interact with it visually, like let's say watch a video, like it'd be very difficult for you to watch a video and drive a car at the same time, for example, or potentially watch a video and work out at the same time. But you can easily watch listen to a podcast while you're working out or while you're driving, and it's not gonna distract you. It's you don't have to look at it, and it's just super easy. And that's one of the reasons why podcasts are so popular and why people love podcasting, because they could listening to podcasts, because they can be, like I said, let's say going for a run, and they could be put their headphones on and be listening to a podcast. And that is why there is so much money in podcasting for those who wanna grab the opportunity and continue to work. And in like the example we saw before in the Anchor Facebook group, that guy said, keep at it, keep working. It'll pay in the long run if you're disciplined, if you love it, if you're good at it, etc. Right? So let me just show you right now, without further ado, the example that I mentioned about these other guys who are making $60,000 a month. And by the way, you can check this yourself. This is not science fiction. This is not something I'm making up. You can easily check this yourself. If you guys go to, what I'm going to show you yourself directly on your browser or on your mobile device, you will be able to validate and check what I'm just showing you right now. So I was just here on the Apple podcasting thing, just showing you what the app looks like. And, on the App Store, just real quickly, if you wanted to download Anchor, you just go and search for Anchor, search. And here it is, the second one here, the purple one, it says Anchor. And what's new? And here it is, record your podcast, etc. This is the app that I used to create my own podcast, and this is the app that the people you were seeing before in the Facebook group were using to record their podcast as well, and to share how much money they were making with their podcast. They were sharing that, in that Facebook group, the Anchor Facebook group, which is the app that they are using, and the app that I also use myself to create my podcast. And this is an app that you can use. It's free. You can use that yourself, and you can download it to your mobile device. It is probably the easiest, fastest way to create a podcast, and probably also to monetize it. Like I did a lot of exploring before I ended up deciding on using Anchor. And I looked at a ton of different apps, that are out there to create podcasts. And I'm happy to share with you other examples of apps that you can, use to create your podcast. But the reason why I ended up choosing Anchor myself personally is because it is just super easy for you to create a podcast with Anchor. And you don't have to pay for hosting. You don't have to pay recurring monthly fees. You don't have to pay pretty much for anything, which is why it's such a great app. And you can actually use it to monetize your podcast directly with Anchor themselves, which is pretty cool, or indirectly if you, for example, got your own sponsors yourself and people paid you directly just to advertise something in your podcast, all right? So you don't have to necessarily make money with Anchor directly, even though they have a marketplace for ads and people who will, basically pay you to advertise something for them directly via Anchor. They do have a marketplace for that and a way to monetize via Anchor, but some people can also choose to potentially perhaps just get their own sponsors or, just do their own advertising deals separately outside of Anchor. And Anchor still allows that, which is pretty cool. But anyway, enough about Anchor. You know where to get it. You just go to Apple, the App Store, or if you're in using an Android device, just go to the Google Play Store and download the Anchor app. And let me just go back and show you. If you go to your browser, I use Brave. Brave is the browser that I use on my mobile device and on my computer, on my laptop, on my tablet. But some people, you would be using Google Chrome. Some people would be using Microsoft Edge or Firefox, and a few people would also be using Safari from Apple. So regardless of what you use, just go to your browser, all right? And then just go to patreon.com, all right? Patreon.com, and just click on go. And then this is a website that basically allows people to get money from other people, from what Patreon calls patrons, who are basically giving you money in exchange for something. And in this case, for example, some podcasters, some people who are podcasting, they give some perks or some rewards to people. And then other people who are listening or hearing, who are hearing or listening to their podcast can then just pay them for their creation. All right. So I'm just going to show you here an example of the guys that I mentioned to you. Let's just call it podcast. I think they're called The Last. It's called The Last Podcast on the Left, right? The first one that is coming up here in the search results. And note this down if you want to look at it yourself later. It's just called The Last Podcast on the Left. And we're just going to tap on that. All right. And levels of membership. So here it is. Like I was saying, these are the different perks that they give people who are paying for their memberships and the different memberships that they offer. So they basically get perks in exchange for supporting their podcast, right? And you can see here, ad-free stories, episodes, etc. So you see here what they're giving to people basically in exchange for their subscription. But here you go. 12,328 patrons. This means there are over 12,000 people paying to them. Each one of them could be paying $5, $10 a month, or $25 a month. And so they basically have defined three different, subscription tiers, which you can, by the way, customize on Patreon. Patreon does allow you, if you're using Patreon, you can create your own perks and you can charge as much as you like for them, etc. But basically, check this out. What I'm showing you here on screen, $64,000 a month. So that's even higher than the last time I checked this. So last time I checked this, these guys were making about $60,000 a month, which is still a ton of money. And now they're even making more money, almost $65,000 a month. Now, isn't this awesome? Isn't it awesome that you can do something creative in your own time with just something as simple and as basic as your smartphone and make $60,000 or over $60,000 a month? That's amazing. And I love this example because I showed you before some other examples of some people making, $600, $70, almost $9,000. And here's another one of some guys making $60,000 a month. Now, I love it. I think that's awesome. I think we live in such exciting times that people can use technology to create revenue and different revenue streams relatively easily, like so easily with so little to no investment aside from potentially their time and their talent. Like you don't have to go out and buy a place and set up a restaurant and stuff like that. Like in the modern world, you can just use your mobile device or your laptop or your tablet and create a revenue stream such as the one we're seeing on screen. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that anyone can easily make $60,000 with a podcast. Obviously, I'm not saying that. It's not that it's like super easy and you just snap your fingers and you're going to be making $60,000 a month. Now, I'm sure these guys invested a lot of time in creating many episodes for their podcast. They're probably really talented guys. It's definitely probably really interesting to listen to their podcast, and you probably do the exercise of looking for their podcast, which is called, as you saw before, The Last Podcast on the Left, and hear it and listen to it. And you'll probably understand why so many people love these guys and so many people are paying money to support them with their podcasts. And here you go. They're making almost $60,000 a month, $65,000 a month. And here is a little bit about them. You can read more here in Patreon about their community, etc. Become a patron. And okay, these are some posts. Obviously you have to pay to be able to view their posts. This is part of the Patreon revenue model. And okay, so they're just using Patreon. And again, feel free to explore Patreon yourself. If you go to Patreon, patreon.com, what we're seeing here in the browser, you can find more about how people use Patreon to make money. And this is an example of guys who are podcasting and just exchanging, for a monthly membership, some perks to people, and people are engaging with them. Well, they're making over $60,000 a month. What better example of these than of someone who is making money with a podcast? So that's why I wanted to show you this. And I think it's a really good example of how people, like I said before, make money podcasting. All right, guys, I'll leave you with that one. And I'm sure if you like podcasting, if you like recording your voice and sharing with other people, stories, anecdotes, or something that you find really interesting or something that you're really passionate about, like that other guy that we saw who was teaching Korean to people. Like if you have any of those talents or you enjoy, like I said, recording your voice and sharing your thoughts or sharing knowledge about something specifically with people, then podcasting is definitely something you should be exploring as one of the many different ways in which you could be making money in the modern world. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.